If you've been on a personal growth or healing journey and you feel like you've been doing the inner work and everything you know to do, but you still feel like you're stuck, I'm going to share with you why that is, why people who are doing the inner work still feel stuck with the same negative emotions, limiting beliefs, self sabotaging behaviors. And more important than that, I'm going to share with you what you can do instead that's actually going to help you create. Because in many cases, we can understand and intellectualize our past, the traumas, the things that we've gone through, but understanding it intellectually, analyzing it, feeling like we're self aware, it doesn't actually remove the issue. It doesn't actually make you feel better. In some cases, it's like, I'm so self aware. What do I do next? So, if that resonates with you, I'm going to encourage you and invite you to watch this masterclass because I went through that and I'm on the other side of it. I figured out that there are things that actually work to help you improve your life and your well being that don't require you to constantly relive the past or get stuck in these same cycles again. So, if you are here, it is likely that you're experiencing these things. Like you understand your trauma, your triggers, your behaviors, your patterns, your negative emotions. You're like, I'm so aware that I'm angry or feeling a lot of shame or guilt. It sometimes feel like there's this like invisible force where you get stuck in the same cycle. The pattern keeps running. It might be different circumstances, different people, different places, but it always kind of feels similar, the same. You're aware of it, but you're unable to move forward. It's almost like you're again stuck in this cycle. And what you desire, if you're being honest with yourself, is like you want to feel more fulfilled. You want to feel like you have more control over your life, over yourself, over your emotions, higher self esteem, and feel a sense of like well being where it doesn't feel like you're constantly arguing in your head or doing self sabotaging behaviors or spending all of your time overthinking or ruminating or creating like worst case scenarios. And you feel like that's possible because you're seeing it out like other people are able to accomplish that, but you're wondering what's going on that you're putting in the time, energy, and effort, and it's just not landing or working for you. And I know the frustration of that because a lot of times when I work with, I'll introduce myself in a moment, but when I work with clients, a lot of times they're like, I have tried all of the things. I've gone to talk therapy. Some of the people have been in talk therapy for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And I say an honest no, I'm more self-aware. I understand what to do, but it's like in the moment I can't get myself to do it. The patterns, the behaviors keep coming back. And what happens for a lot of people is that you try to use willpower. You make new decisions. You're like, today's the day. I'm going to be different. I'm not going to get triggered by that thing. I'm going to act differently. I'm going to think different thoughts. And you are well-meaning, but if we've ever noticed that willpower doesn't really last too long, you go right back to what was happening, your old patterns and behaviors in like a day or two, if you even last that long. And so you might have done self-help, like you've gone to either coaches or coaching, personal development seminars, maybe you've done journaling, and it's insightful and it's helpful, and you're like, oh, that's a really good idea, but it doesn't really change anything underneath the surface. Some of you have probably tried meditation or being more mindful or breathing through it. Some people have even gone the somatic or EMDR route, and that might have been helpful to some degree. But I've heard things where people are like, it didn't really remove everything. I feel a little bit better, feel a little bit different, but I still am reactionary and still experiencing these negative emotions, these limitations. And then what a lot of people do, it's also like the affirmations, but you're kind of saying affirmations out loud that your mind doesn't really truly believe. So it kind of feels like it's being blocked or you can't really fully get behind the affirmation. And then so what leads this to you feel stressed or frustrated and you feel fundamentally that there's might be something wrong with you because all of the things that you're doing are not working. So if this sounds like you, again, I'm going to invite you to stay with me for this masterclass because my intention is that this insight and what I'm going to share with you can absolutely radically change your life by giving you a new possibility and deeply understanding why this has been happening in a way that's going to make a lot of sense to you because you're already intelligent, you're already self aware, and you're already doing the inner work. And I'm going to share with you what actually can help you change what's going on internally so that you can have a different experience of your external world. So if you still feel triggered by past traumas or things that have happened, even if they happened a long time ago and you're struggling with emotions like anger, sadness, fear, guilt, or shame that feel a bit overwhelming. And what I mean by that is like it's normal to feel these emotions, right? But it's abnormal or not desired when we feel them all the time for literally no reason, and it's just constantly getting triggered. So if you feel like you're triggered by these negative emotions a lot, this is for you. If you feel stuck or blocked in multiple areas of life, or one particular area where it feels like no matter how hard you try, no matter how much effort you put in, you still end up in the exact same place in the same cycle. This might be with your finances, with your health, with your emotions. It could be with your level of fulfillment, or any area of relationships. It just feels like you're in the same cycle. And it might lead you to you're overthinking things. You spend a lot of time in your head and you wonder if you're ever going to figure it out or if life is ever going to feel better. You want to have happier, more joyful experience of life and more inner peace, but it's almost like your mind will let you do that. You might consider yourself, and I think for most people here, if you resonated with what I've shared so far, you consider yourself to be self-aware. You're like hyper aware of the problem, and you know the patterns, you know the issues, you know the things that you're doing, but knowing them does not make them go away. It doesn't make them stop. And that's where the frustration comes in. It's because you're like, how could I be aware of this and then not be able to actually take action that I want to take? And you might experience things like you'll describe it as inner conflict or self-sabotage, where it's almost like you have these parts inside of you, like one part wants a different experience of this, and this other part like comes in and gets activated, like won't let you do that, or sabotage the situation, or starts an argument, or whatever. It goes into that shame cycle of I can't do it, that storyline in your head. And again, you probably tried things before. You've tried talk therapy, willpower, positive thinking, really trying to be on top of things, and you still end up in that same. And what I've heard from a lot of people, and I went through this too, is that sometimes, especially if you've had complex trauma throughout your life and you went through a whole host of it, talking about it often unintentionally reactivates it. So if you've been in therapy and you've had the experience of like, wow, I went to therapy and I feel like worse that I've talked about all of that, like it doesn't make me feel better. It's like, now what? Right. And I think that a lot of people who end up working with me have had that experience where they're like, I'm so tired of talking about this. And you might intellectually know, like, hey, that happened 20 years ago, but it's still taking up space in your head. The issue that most people experience is that talking is not a deactivation for trauma. It's actually a reactivation for it, because your mind cannot tell the difference between something that is currently happening and something that you're vividly imagining in your head, which is if you had someone pretend to bite into a lemon, right? After a moment, if they were really imagining it, their mouth would start salivating. You might even hearing the word lemon and biting into it might cause your mouth to start salivating, but there's no lemon, right? And so in the same way, when we talk about trauma or past negative experiences, it can reactivate those same emotional states, flood our body with that emotion, and then we wonder why we don't feel good. And we wonder why it's still active, and we're like, I'm trying to let it go. So what if that's not the solution, that there's actually a different way that your mind works that most people just simply don't know about, or they heard about and they don't truly understand it? And that's what I want to share with you today, because I went on my own healing journey where I was that was me. I was trying literally everything under the sun to feel better. I woke up every day of my life with dread, with anxiety. I was diagnosed with depression, a panic disorder. I was getting panic attacks a day. There were a lot of times where I didn't want to be here anymore because I was like, I cannot deal. Like I was suffering. And there was not a year of my life from starting from the age of 6 where I didn't experience some major trauma or multiple traumas throughout the years. And it was really hard to keep my head above water. So I did the traditional approaches. Everyone's like, go talk to a therapist, go to grief counseling, go on medications, meditate every day. And I did all of the things. And I just perceived like there obviously has to be something fundamentally wrong with me because I'm not better. And not only was I not better, sometimes I was worse. So all of that being said, I then started studying, well, how does the mind work? How does trauma get stored? How all of these different modalities? Because after I had a friend who suggested that I do a hypnosis session. And this person asked me, like, hey, I've heard this trauma. I had one trauma story, and I'm sure some of you can relate to this, where it was on loop in my head. And it was on loop in my head for a decade. And I kept talking about it over and over and over and over again because I was trying to process it. And I couldn't make sense of it. I couldn't let it go. I couldn't put it in the past. It was literally like right here in my head. And this person said, hey, do you want to let that memory go? Like, do you want to let the charge of that go? And I said, of course I do. I've been trying to for 10 years. It just won't go away. Literally, after my first hypnosis slash NLP session, like working with this different part of the mind, after 90 minutes, that memory that had been on loop in my head for 10 years, I had no more emotional charge to it. The emotional charge was literally gone. It was in the past, it was something that happened and didn't mean I didn't have a memory of it. I had no more reaction to that emotion, that experience, that emotion, even to the person that was involved. Forgave the person, was like, I see this from a higher perspective. I'm good. I never thought that was going to be possible for me. And that's what really encouraged me to study this and really understand, like, how was that possible? Because I know that there are so many people out there who are suffering like I was, and I don't want to see that, because I've actually realized that there are approaches that do not require you to endlessly talk about or relive or have to try to overpower your mind or use so much willpower where you're in this source of shame that you haven't been able to figure it out. It's not you, it's the modalities. So right now, I'm the owner of Break the Cycle Hypnosis, and I help people use with unconscious mind work. So I'm a hypnosis practitioner, a neuro-linguistic programming practitioner. Lots of people, when you say that word, that's a lot of syllables. I won't quiz you on that. But essentially, what I help people do is work with a different part of the mind than you would in your traditional approaches to therapy. It's going to be very different from what most people, most approaches are actually doing and offering. And I want to explain to you how this works so that you are not only equipped with the knowledge, but you know what to do next if this has been resonating with you and you're like, that sounds exactly what I'm going through. And what I help people do is stop being so emotionally hijacked by the past. Because you might know it's your childhood trauma. You might know that there are things that have happened to you and you're like, that's why I'm reacting this way. But it doesn't unplug the charge and it doesn't make the limiting belief or the negative emotions or the self-sabotaging behaviors go away. But I do know what does. And so I help people not only get really so they're not hijacked anymore by the past, but also be able to create and align with a life that you're actually in love with. Meaning you want to wake up every day. You actually enjoy life and you're able to deal with the stuff that happens in a much more emotionally neutral way where like life feels like it's starting to work. And I want to preface this as a disclaimer. I'm not giving you medical advice. I'm not giving you psychiatric advice. None of that, anything that I'm sharing today is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure disease. And I'm also going to be sharing a lot of before and afters and testimonials today. So I just wanted you to know in advance, there's no guarantee or claim that this is going to exactly work in that very way for you. But my intention is to inspire something inside of you to know that you're not stuck and there's a way out of this if this has been resonating. Because what I believe to be true is that you don't have a self-awareness problem or a willpower problem. What's actually happening is that you're trying to force change by working with the wrong part of the mind. Everyone tells you to go talk about it, go to a doctor. And I'm not saying that those things are wrong, but most people are working with the part of the mind that is least responsible for what you're going through. It's least responsible for your habits, your emotions, and your behaviors. And I'm going to explain this. So there are two minds, and you might have already heard about this. You probably already have heard of the subconscious or the unconscious. You might have already heard of the conscious mind, but they're very different. And most approaches are only working with your conscious mind. And I'm going to share with you why this is a problem and why so many people who have been to therapy for decades of their life still are struggling with the same things they went into therapy for. Because your conscious mind is in charge of a few things: logic, reason, being able to be self-aware, to analyze like what's going on, to make decisions, to set goals and intentions, it's in charge of willpower. And it's the most recent part of our brain, meaning that it only recently developed in the last couple of thousand years. And so it's very limited in its capacity. But this is where we end up getting stuck in the self-awareness trap, where you're aware, but what happens? You're like aware of the thing and you set your goal and intention. You have your goal and intention out here. And what happens? Well, as soon as you're not using that willpower, as soon as you're not hyper self-aware in the moment, you get triggered and all of your stuff is going in a different direction. And that's what the unconscious mind is in charge of, is everything else. So if your conscious mind is only in charge of about, let's just say 5 to 10%, that's an estimate of your mental processing power. That's not a lot, right? And it's also infinitely slower than the unconscious. I'll share with you what I mean by that in an example in a moment. But your unconscious is actually what's in charge of your survival instincts, all of the things that feel like they're on autopilot. Your emotions, your stored behaviors. Notice that your emotions are here. They're not conscious. You don't consciously think of having an emotion. You just feel things. That makes sense? You can consciously put a label on what you're feeling, and you can consciously think about maybe I shouldn't be feeling that because if I looked at it this way, I wouldn't feel it. But your emotions are almost more instinctual. Your survival instincts, your flight, or freeze response, instinctual. Your beliefs, who you believe yourself to be, your core identity, all unconscious. You don't think about having those problems. You don't think about having that belief. It's just there. And it's all involved in this automatic behaviors. The older, it's much older. It's your survival brain, right? And so think about it this way. It's actually really beautiful that we have the unconscious, because think of all of the things that you don't have to think about throughout your day. You don't think about your heart beating. You don't have to think about your hormones, your liver enzymes, all of things that are running all your bodily functions. They are all being run by the programs of the unconscious. Could you imagine if we had to remember how to do everything each and every day that we woke up? We'd be literally exhausted. And so to give you an example of the difference of how these things work, your conscious mind, if you ever learned how to drive a car or ride a bike, I'm sure most people watching this have had those experiences. You have to use a lot of conscious awareness when you're first starting how to learn where to put my feet, how do I look at things, like how do I balance on a bike, or where are my mirrors in the car. And it takes a little bit, but then all of a sudden your mind learns it and it becomes unconscious. So you're just able to drive the car, ride the bike, and you don't have to think about it anymore. It requires very little computing power. It's automatic. That's how our minds work. These things that we learn, so our patterns, our behaviors, our beliefs, our identity, become automatic. So what's happening for so many people is they're trying to use the most limited part of their mind, what they're consciously aware of, willpower, making new decisions, to try to overpower your nervous system. And it feels impossible because it's literally you're not designed to be able to do that. It's very short-lived. It's only about 5%. And so it leaves people in this frustration because your unconscious mind is running so many things that you can't overpower it. It's almost like the programming. In the same way that clicking out of a pop-up on a computer doesn't uninstall the program that's causing the pop-up, it's really important to understand the distinction between these two things, because if you work with the unconscious, you can actually make change to the 95% of your mental processing. The cool thing is this is updatable, because most people aren't talking to it. So they're trying to overpower it. And that's not how it works. And this is what's leaving so many people frustrated. And I worked with a client who actually really did believe in traditional therapy because she's a social worker. And she said that after 5+ years of clinical therapy, she still felt stuck. She went online frustrated after another therapy appointment and looking for other solutions. She said that when she worked with me, she uncovered, released, and reprogrammed things that she hadn't been able to in 5+ years of clinical therapy. Working with Jackie felt like the first time it was actually uprooting these issues as opposed to simply talking about them over and over. So the reason that these approaches that most people have been trying to do, or that society tells us to do, it's not that they're wrong, it's just they're working with a part of the mind that is least responsible for what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with emotional triggers that feel automatic, you're not consciously doing that. You're not intentionally being triggered. That's coming from somewhere else. So with talk therapy, willpower, and self-awareness, they're great, but they're outnumbered. Talking about it in the same way that clicking out of a trigger doesn't remove the programming underneath it. Being self-aware, watching yourself react is a little bit late, isn't it? So I'm going to give you another example of this, of how this actually is a good thing that our minds do this. Because if you're in the woods, let's just say you're walking in the woods and you're in bear country and you hear something drop from a tree and it sounds big. What happens in your body? Your heart rate goes up. Your palms start getting sweaty. You start going into a fight, flight, or freeze response, whatever your body is naturally. You go into a survival instinct and you experience fear, right? It doesn't make sense from a survival standpoint for you to sit there and intellectualize, or stand there and intellectualize, well, is it really a bear? What if it was a raccoon? You don't have time to use logic and reason. Your body is going to respond instinctually to keep you safe. And then a couple of moments later, that's when the conscious mind starts to look at okay, well, maybe it wasn't a bear. I noticed it wasn't a bear. Something fell from the tree. I'm okay. And then everything can start to calm down. But the consciousness comes on later. It's a little bit delayed. So that's why it's very difficult to try to use that self-awareness or that willpower to overpower the instinctual response. And a lot of times what happens is when we're kids, we get all of these programs, and I'm using the language of that because I think of the mind as a computer, because I think it's a really good analogy, even though it's not perfect. So if you start to think about your mind as though it's a computer that is operating all of these programs that are just running in the background of your life, right? So we make associations that keep us safe in the moment that just never get updated. Let me share a story from a client, because this is going to make so much sense to you, and you might even hear yourself or see yourself in this woman. She came to me because she was really, really struggling with what she said. She is I have diagnosed depression, and I've been struggling with this for several decades. And I asked her, I said, well, how does that show up for you? Because when people say that they have depression or they're depressed, it can mean different things for different people. So I said, how does this show up for you? And she said, all I do is sleep all day. I go to work, I come home, and I'm so exhausted, I'm drained, I'm tired, and I just nap. And then I get up and I have like, I'm still tired, and then I go to bed. And she goes, this has been going on for like most of my life. And it's hard because I've gone through to talk therapy, I've talked through my trauma, I've gone on medications, and nothing seems to be working. I'm just tired all the time and it's so draining and it makes me feel awful. And I'm in a relationship. She was married to a wonderful man and she's like, I just don't have any energy to like do anything with him. So in our first hypnosis, like NLP session, the way I work with the mind is I help you just to start to build a connection, a conversation with the deeper parts of your mind that know when something got created for what purpose and what the solution is. So for her, what we did is we asked the mind to show her through symbols and metaphors and like what was going on with this circumstance of depression and sleeping all day. And it brought up for her childhood home and her bedroom and her dad. And her dad has struggled a lot with alcohol addiction. So I don't know if you grew up with that, but I did. And it's very scary, right? So there's this man that she's living with, her dad, who is violent, has a really big temper, and there's a lot of chaos in her home. He's always yelling, and she's very afraid of him. And one day she came home from school and she wasn't feeling too great, and she went to her bedroom and she fell asleep. And her dad left her alone. She slept through the whole chaos and she wasn't afraid. So, what do you think happened? Her mind linked an association with you come home, you go to sleep, and you're safe. Can you hear the program? Come home, you go to sleep, you're safe. You're in sleep through the chaos. But the problem is, once something gets programmed in, especially in early childhood, it operates like a program. It just keeps running. It's like, oh, this is safety, safety. Safety is sleeping. Safety is just going to bed. Safety is in the bed. So this part that she was fighting with her whole life, talking about endlessly about this depression, going to every resource that she could to get rid of it, was actually just trying to keep her safe. This whole time, it wasn't trying to ruin her life. It was trying to protect her from her dad. And so all we did in this session is I just like let that part know. I'm like, hey, do you know, like, okay, so you're trying to keep her safe, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, what's the purpose of keeping her safe? Oh, so she could live a happy, fulfilled life. Do you know she's not 5 anymore and she doesn't live with her dad and she's actually living with a wonderful man? The parts don't know. Sometimes the program just never gets updated. We update our computers and our phones more than we update our mind because most people don't know how to do this. It took me a long time to figure this out. Our minds are like running like programs and they're updatable and they're not trying to ruin your life. In most cases, they're actually trying to help you. So this depression that she was experiencing, put that in quotations because it was manifesting as like sleeping, was trying to protect her. And it was running this survival program. And all I did was ask the part, do you know she's not 5? I didn't. What's actually happening is now she's not living a happy and fulfilled life because you're making her sleep through her life. Would you be willing to do something different? Could we update this? Where it's actually the safest thing for her is to not have this experience, is actually to live in her life and be in her relationship and be able to come home from work and enjoy her life. The next week, she said, I have not slept. I have not slept, like taken a nap since we worked on that. Not that she hasn't slept. She hadn't taken a nap. She goes, I have more energy than I know what to do with. A month later, she's like, it hasn't come back. She goes, it's just gone. And something that she's been struggling with for decades literally took a conversation. And that's what happened to me when I told you earlier my story. Decade of my life, repeat, loop, 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 loop. Took 90 minutes of figuring out like what do I need to understand or see differently? How do I need to change this and sort this in my mind differently so it's in the past and it's outdated and I don't need it anymore. Okay. So the programming, and we get all of these associations. It's sometimes super outside of our conscious awareness. She never would have been able to find that by talking about it. Right. It was, we asked her unconscious to show her what was going on. And it's so willing to update, so willing to work with her. Literally, it was almost instant. Okay. So it's offering the update. You don't need to talk about it or use more willpower. We're basically asking the program, and I use this language intentionally. It's not a perfect metaphor, but to update. And what if the actual issue is that you've not been getting to the root cause? Because what I have found is that sometimes the root is often deeply unconscious. It is not uncommon for clients of mine when I ask for sometimes we ask like, hey, when did this get created? Sometimes the things are passed down to you. there's like in your DNA. From some of my clients have had in their past, their history, their ancestors went through like intense war or famine or oppression, and it gets passed down to them in their DNA. Sometimes things they have a traumatic birth or their mom had some trauma in while they were in the womb, and we tend to not think that because we don't have memories of it, that that stuff doesn't impact us. But in my work of doing this for several years, like it does, and it doesn't have to stay like that. We can go into the past, not reliving it, but go see what needed to get updated or to let that go. And so, what if the inner critic, all the things you do not like about yourself, that you're fighting yourself, what if we don't have to fight ourselves anymore? What if those things are not the problem? They're just symptoms of the deeper problem. And just what I've found is that the real cause often lives deeper. It's sometimes so outside your conscious awareness that you can't find it by just talking about it or intellectualizing it or using logic and reason. It's very interesting because the unconscious is not the realm of logic and reason. It's the realm of like symbols and metaphors and images and colors and emotions. And so it's a lot different to work with this part of the mind than it is for you to just sit and talk about it and be self-aware. So what really drives things under the surface is these unconscious programs, the survival responses, like this client had. It was a survival response, right? Go to sleep. You sleep through the chaos. The old emotional wounds, the core beliefs formed early on in life. But what you see is I have an inner critic, I have anxiety, I have depression, I have self-sabotage. There's something fundamentally wrong with me. I'm so emotionally reactive. I can't stand it. And limiting beliefs. But really, it's just the associations that you made at some point in life. And the cool thing is your unconscious mind almost acts like a recording system for everything that happened since you were conceived. And you might not believe that. You don't have to believe me. But that's just what I've experienced is that your mind keeps track of literally everything that's ever happened. Whether you're consciously aware of it or not, your mind has it. So all we're doing is accessing basically the cloud of all of the information that your mind has stored throughout your life. And let's go figure out when this issue got quote unquote installed and what do we need to do differently to update it. And the problem will begin to just go away in the same way that if you updated something on your computer, it would just auto update. So I'm hoping this is making sense to you and then you're still here and you're like, oh, yeah, that's probably what's been happening. I had a client come to me and she's like, Jackie, I've done all the things. Like, I feel you. I understand. I really do deeply understand what it feels like, the frustration. And she said, I use sound healing, Reiki, talk therapy, quantum healing, affirmations, yoga, meditation. She went on medications. She tried everything and nothing worked. She said, she, meaning me, Jackie works directly with the part of the mind that runs our beliefs, behaviors, and patterns. We get to the root of everything keeping us stuck. The most profound moment was when we removed all of the old stuck frustration in my body. It took 2 days to integrate. And then I was a completely different human. She came to me, she's like, I'm so frustrated. She was a mom or is a mom who didn't want to create the same dynamics of trauma, pass that down to her kids that she experienced as a kid. But her experience was, I'm trying to stop feeling so angry, frustrated, fearful, shameful, guilty. It was just so much for her. And she's like, I don't want to do this to my kids. She had a baby. She was a stepmom. And she's like, I'm so ready to let this go, but I don't know how. And nothing I'm doing is working. And once we worked with this for 8 weeks, and she was an entirely different human by the end. She's like, I feel like I'm finally the person who I've been wanting to be all of this time and all these years. And so when I say this can actually be fast, I'm not kidding. I will share with you in a moment like what before and after 8 weeks of doing this work can actually look like. And it's been working for people from all walks of life, religious backgrounds, spiritual beliefs, different genders, different life experiences, different career paths. It's really just working with what's underneath the surface. And here's the key. I don't want you to keep fighting yourself or fighting with your mind or making yourself wrong for having the negative experiences or the limiting beliefs or having to go back and forth in your head like, I shouldn't think this way. It's so exhausting, isn't it? But what I do differently is we want to work with your mind. I don't believe that your mind is the enemy. Your mind is not, it seems like your mind's against itself, but it's because your conscious mind, your unconscious mind are pointing in two different directions. That push pull, that goal, but your unconscious mind is pointing in this way. That's where you feel that push pull. What we do differently here at Break Cycle Hypnosis is we work with the unconscious. We speak the language of the unconscious, which is metaphors, symbols, imagery, instead of just talking about it using logic and reason. So if you're open to it being a bit different, if you're open to using metaphor or getting the root cause or just trusting that even if it doesn't make full sense to you, that's working, this is for you because this can radically change your life in a very short period of time. And what I help you do is remap it so that your mind creates these neural connections, right? We know about neural plasticity. Like our minds are not actually stuck. We can change. But the problem is we have grooves that our brains have just been fired together and wired together, fired together. If you've heard of the Joe Dispenza stuff, right? He's just like, you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And it becomes easy to go down that path the same way it's easy to drive to work the same way every day or to go to the store the same way. But what we're going to do is essentially like interrupt that path, close that off and create a new path, a new way of being, a new thing available so that your mind can do this instead of going this way. And all of a sudden, it will begin to feel a little bit easier and more natural to have the life that you want than it has been. Okay. So it's like not fighting yourself, it's getting you into alignment. What alignment is when your conscious goals and your unconscious mind are pointing in the same direction. Because there's no resistance. They're like, yeah, let's go. The areas of your life that are working, if any, right now, is because your conscious goals, what you want and what you believe and your values of what should be happening is actually in alignment with your habits, thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. The parts of your life that are not working, it feels like this. Okay. So that's what we're doing here is we're chipping away at this. We clean up the root cause. We look at like, what are these patterns or paradigms or things that were created and how do we let them go? How do we like bring yourself into alignment? How do we stop fighting yourself? And one of the ways we do this is by working with the mind and believing that the mind is actually trying to help you, not trying to ruin your life. Even though it might feel like you're stuck in misery all the time, what if it's not really like, what if your mind has actually been trying to help you this whole time? And then we condition a new way of being. So it's easier to keep doing this and keep up with this in the same way that it was easy just to go the old way before. We don't intellectualize the problem. We don't talk about why you're anxious. We clear the store experience that's causing and leading to these. We don't sit there and understand and be like, okay, I understand my inner critic because this is the way my dad talked to me when I was a kid. Yeah, we get it. But what we do differently, what we would do differently here is like find out what the purpose of that creation is, figure out and give it a different job. Like the depression part of that woman was not actually trying to harm her, it was actually trying to keep her alive. And it was willing to do a different thing once it realized it wasn't actually getting the result of having her have a happy, fulfilled life. We don't try to override our negative thoughts because we've all tried that and it doesn't work. What we do is change the belief, we let it go so that whatever driving that negative thought, that loop, that pattern of like, I'm a failure or I'm not enough is no longer there. It's no longer active. I call it like unplugging. We unplug the charge to the past so that you just have your energy back and you can plug into what you want in the future and just actually accomplish that. And here's the thing, nobody wants to manage their reactions. I think the whole concept of like anger management, nobody wants to be in anger management or manage their emotions. And think about that because management's a job, isn't it? It requires like, I have to manage these things. What if you didn't? You're not really looking to manage your emotions. You're actually looking to stop feeling triggered, right? That's what I help with. Let's unplug the trigger, let's uninstall the program that's causing you to feel triggered all the time so you can get to this level of neutrality that then leads you to feeling more happiness and more joy because you're not triggered by the things that used to trigger you all the time. And I help with this each and every day. I help people from all walks of life experience this. This person said, I'm no longer feeling I'm trying to feel better. I feel effortlessly good, which is mind blowing. She came to me and she was like, I am really struggling in a couple areas of my life. Life is looking good, but there are some things that are really damaging to my self-esteem and my self-worth. My mind is quiet and I can finally be fully present. Jeff said, I came in feeling like I was working so hard, but still ending up in the same place. He had been in talk therapy for a number of years and was like, I'm very self-aware, but I don't feel different. And so he said, this work fixes the systems responsible for the thoughts and behaviors not aligned with your intentions. Perfect way of putting it. Love that. Constantly triggered, reactive. My only emotion was frustration. I now embody what I always wanted, a nurturing mother, a loving wife, an embodiment of self-love. So you might be asking, well, how do you do this? How do we accomplish this? What does this look like? Before we dive into that, what I want to share is like, what are some results of doing this work? Here's what's possible. Here's what actual clients have experienced. Waking up and feeling like life is working. Getting unstuck and stopping the cycles of feeling so triggered. Letting go of past traumas. Putting them in the past that have been weighing you down. Letting go of all of the baggage. Removing the limiting beliefs. Forgiving and moving forward with freedom. And I say this, I'm not going to pass over that. Your freedom is related to being able to forgive and let go. And forgiveness does not mean that the other person didn't do something wrong. I actually help people forgive the unforgivable. And you might not believe me about that. You're like, Jackie, there are things that are unforgivable. I understand. I do understand. And I help people regain their freedom and their power back from these things, these awful, these unforgivable things. You can get your power back when you choose something different. And I'm going to help you get out of this cycle of living that way. Feeling good rather than feeling bad, getting rid of inner conflict and self sabotage. What if you're your own best friend instead of having an inner critic? Stop feeling so overwhelmed or like you have all of this stuff stuck in your head. Improve sense of well being, fulfillment, better habits, more self esteem. And in a lot of cases, even if we don't work on this, all my clients start making money. Like I had one client who's like, all these random checks are coming in, and she's a stay at home mom. She doesn't even have a job. She's like, I can't. All this money has been unblocked. So when you clear out this stuff, things can start flowing for you in a lot of different avenues. The way that I accomplish this, the results of the testimonials that I've been sharing, have been the program that I have called The Process. And it's 8 weeks. It's designed to help you transform from the inside out. The first thing we do, phase one, do I have permission to share this with you? Because I don't want to just jump into this, but if I have permission and you're interested in learning about this, I encourage you to stay. If you found value in how I've been explaining this so far, I'd like to explain to you the process that I created to help you actually achieve this. When I started healing using hypnosis and NLP and somatic work, there were some processes that I did that were like the most effective and the fastest thing. And so what I did is I reverse engineered what were the steps that I took that got me to a 180 in my life. Because I told you earlier what my experience was. I had endless amounts of trauma. My life is working in ways like I didn't even think that it was possible. Like everything I put on the vision board somehow comes true. I feel good about who I am, what I'm doing, my business is working. All these things are working. And I've helped others, not just me, I've helped other people accomplish this too. So in phase one of this program, what we do is we get clarity. What's working? What's not working? Where's the gap? Some people start this and they're like, my self-esteem is a 0. Some people start it and their self-esteem is like, okay, it's 6. It depends on like where you are. I've worked with people who they're like, life is like kind of good. It's like there's some areas that are working, some that are in the middle of the road. And I work with some people who are like, I am starting at 0. Like this couldn't make me any worse because everything's at like a 1. So we get clarity on that. And then the second phase, which is around weeks 2 to 4, is clearing out all of the baggage, the root cause, limiting beliefs, negative emotions, the attachments that you have to people that are just like plugged into your energy that are pulling you. We clean all of the baggage up. And you would be like, that's really fast. Yeah, we can do a lot in those couple of weeks. Phase 3 is about realignment. So we get addicted to our trauma stories. Our identity is formed around the things that happen to us. It becomes the question of like, well, who would I be without that story, right? Who would I be without? Like if I spent so much of my time and energy focused on that and now I don't have it, who would I be? Who am I? Right? So I help you figure that out. Who do you want to be? How do you want to show up? How does life want to feel for you now that we clean that out? And we get you into alignment. We make sure that your values and rules for life are supportive. Because right now, your rules for life, if you feel miserable every day, it's probably have to do A plus B plus C plus D in that order, in that sequence. If anything goes out of order, if I miss one of them, the whole day is ruined. Maybe not you, but maybe you resonate with that in some way. And then to feel good, like it's so complicated for you to feel good. And it's easy for you to feel bad. One thing goes wrong. So we reverse that in your mind. So it's actually easier for you to feel good and harder for you to feel bad. I also make sure that the right parts of you are in charge. Some of you have wounded child parts that are still running the show because that part never got integrated because it's still stuck. Like I showed you before with that client with the depression. That part of her was still stuck at 5, didn't know she was in her 40s. And then we condition it. So we make it easier for this to be the new reality, this to be the new realm. Okay. And so there's processes that I do for all of these that are a little bit different from each other. And so I want to show you some real results from real clients. So these are not, hey, this is 2 years later. This is literally what happens in 8 weeks. So the teal color is where the client started. And then the pink color is where they ranked that area of life for 8 weeks later. Okay. So this client, she's a doctor. She's like, I have chronic anxiety. I want to feel better about my relationships, my life, every single area that we worked on. And so we work with 8 areas of life: health, relationships, fulfillment, self-esteem, spirituality, emotional wellness, finance, and career. If 1 or 2 of them doesn't feel relevant to you, we could shift it out for something else. But we work with 8 areas. And typically what I will see and what I focus on is like, let's focus on the 4 that will make everything else better. Let's focus on, those few things that will make everything else better. And in many cases, all of them go up because we're focused on like building self-esteem and level of fulfillment. And so like, of course, your health and well-being will go up. So for her, some of these things went to a 10 out of 10. And I'm going to share with you some others. So I had a client where a lot of things were 2, 4, and went up. Emotional wellness was an 8, went up to a 10. Fulfillment was a 2, went up to an 8. This was self-esteem was a 2, went up to a 9. This client started with a lot of things in the ones, right? This was a mother breaking generational trauma patterns. Self-esteem went from a 1 to a 9. Fulfillment, 1 to a 9. Emotional wellness, 1 to an 8. Health was a 3, it went up to a 7. 8 weeks. This is a different life. And a lot of times people are like, I don't want to give it a 10 because I still have room for improvement. It's like super new. And so when we rewire this, it's almost like there's a new realm of possibility that's available for you. I have this client here. I think her relationships, she decided in the beginning, she's like, my relationships are a 1. Went up to an 8. Self-esteem was a 6, went up to a 9. Finance, kind of if like halfway, went from a 4 to an 8. Emotional wellness went from a 7 to a 9. This client was working, she was struggling with her self-image. She was a high-performing professional. A lot of areas went up substantially here. And I'll just show you a few more just to look at them. Look at the difference. These are huge leaps. Could you imagine like some of these things doubling, tripling, 5xing your quality of life 800% in just 8 weeks? That seems like it shouldn't be able to work. And I don't know anybody's getting these results in traditional approaches. This is fast because it literally works with rewiring the systems so that you can feel better and start to notice that your life is changing. Okay. And also, these are not uncommon results. These are the results that people, like real people, are getting. And they're from all different walks of life, different experiences, different ages, different career paths, different experiences. But what fundamentally is underneath this is they have programs that are coming usually from childhood or even further than that are still operating that aren't getting updated. So all we do is update it. And I have this client, Martha, who said, I feel like I'm actually the version of myself that I created in the 8 weeks. I've stopped searching for what I don't have, and I'm loving what I do have. The actual manifestation of things feels less important to me now. I enjoy the magic of watching life unfold. I became a version of myself that I respect. That's a different life. And that's what I love helping people do and accomplish this because I've done it for myself. And now I feel like it's my mission to help other people who were like me, who really wanted to be better and do better and have more things that and be actually be able to be in alignment. So just a quick overview, like what is the process? And I told you it's 8 weeks. So there's a pre-recorded workshop each week that explains how your mind works in the same way that I was explaining how all this works today. And you might be having a lot of aha moments and going, okay, yeah, that's what's happening. Yes. I explain what we're doing so it doesn't feel so like mystical or confused. It's going to be very simplified so that you can begin to incorporate this new wisdom and understanding as we go through the program. And there's going to be a corresponding one-on-one session. So each week is a bit different in the processes that we do, but they're all designed to work with your unconscious mind and get to the root cause and figure things out. And there'll be reprogramming tools and also conditioning and integration tools as well, so that you're fully supported inside the program and also when we're done. So you'll have the tools and the resources. And it's not designed that you have to like keep doing things. It's really designed to make that easier where you're not in that willpower push and pull. And so you might be asking yourself, well, how do I know if this is even right for me? If you resonated with what I shared, 80% of it, 70% of it, 100% of it, if this made sense to you and you found this video and you felt called to watch it, typically my clients have already pre-decided. They're like, there's something about this that feels, I'm resonating with this. I think I'm supposed to do this. So you can trust your intuition on that. If you've been nodding your head and resonating with this, it's probably for you. A couple of things. If you have the ability to think in mental pictures, like you're able to imagine things in your head, you can do this. If you're able to close your eyes and take a deep breath, even if you don't feel like you're someone who's super relaxes, you can do that. If you're able to use your imagination, there are some people who are not able to use, they don't have any access to mental imagery. This might be a little bit more difficult for you. That's called aphantasia. And it's very rare, but if you know what that is and you have that, and it might not be the best fit for you, but I'd encourage you to book a call with me anyway, see if we can work around that. So if you have openness and receptivity and a willingness to change, if you want to stay stuck, if you want to be in the trauma story or like in that experience and you want to stay like that and you want to stay stuck and you were adamant that all of these things are not resolvable, this is probably not for you. I work with people who are like, I know deep down I can heal this. I just haven't had the right approach yet. You've been wanting to improve yourself. You're willing to do the work. You're willing to become this best version of you. And this feels like a logical next step, probably for you. And again, I already said this, but you feel like resonance with me. It's not for you if you're looking for someone to fix you. I don't do the savior thing. I'm actually not doing the work for you. I'm like holding the space and I know the process is to help you do your own work. So when people hear hypnosis, lots of times they think of like mind control or like something in the movies or like the stage hypnotist they saw in their high school. Nothing like that. It's actually a collaborative effort where we're communicating with your unconscious mind. So if you're not willing to do that and you're wanting someone else to do the work for you, it's not going to be for you. If you're not willing to let go or change or let go of the past, or not willing to change or take responsibility for your own healing, not willing to commit to doing 8 weeks, and you're not open to doing the inner work. Also, I work with people who are like ready to make a decision. The unconscious mind responds to decision makers who are like, I'm doing this. Like once you decide to be in the program, like your life will start shifting. It's really cool. And you might not believe me, but it really does work that way. What do we do next? Book a 10-minute call. We want to make sure that it's a good fit for you. It's a good fit for me, that we're going to work well together. And I'll share pricing and enrollment options and we'll make something work for you. I'm Jackie with Break the Cycle Hypnosis, and I hope this was valuable for you. And thank you for joining me today.